Hello there and welcome to episode 12 of Colonization Project. Right now we are flying the Endurance and we are taking it up to low Kerbal orbit because we really can't go anywhere else with it. I mean, we can fly around Kerbal with it, but that's basically the only two things it can do. Unless we refuel it with fuel, but we don't have that. I mean, we do have the technology to refuel it, but I can't be bothered to do that every time we launch it. So we are taking it up and we are rescuing a stranded Kerbal from orbit and returning him back to Kerbal. So he's not stranded in orbit. We were supposed to do this with the space shuttle in the last episode, but we couldn't because the orbits didn't line up. So we're just doing this instead. You may also notice that this mission is piloted by Jebediah Kerman, not Valentina Kerman, because Valentina Kerman right now is on the Minimus Orbital Outpost, and Jebediah is one of our only pilots that we currently have. And we are picking up a new Kerbal, like I said, and his name is Jurford Kerman, which you will see momentarily. I think it is. And yeah, it's basically this entire mission, and we're not doing much else in it. Actually, we're not doing anything else in it because we need better technology for better SSTOs, so yeah. We need better technology to allow our SSTOs to go further because they can't go really far right now. Because, as you can see, they have limited delta V. Like, we don't have any oxidizer left in the spacecraft. So, our engines, we're relying entirely on our jet engines now. And the chemical engine that we have, it doesn't have any more fuel left. So you can see we cut the margins on these missions very well. I put in all the fuel that it can hold in there, but we still managed to barely make it to orbit and back. But I mean, most of the time we'll have enough fuel for a deorbit burn, and then we can just fly the rest of the way with jet engines. You could see that we did pull some very high G maneuvers. Jurford Kerman almost passed out, which isn't probably the best thing to happen to a new recruit of the space program, but I guess we're astronaut training, you know? But now we are launching a Starship. You can see I did put some legs on it because I did not like having to spend like 2 hours trying to land a booster into catch arms. So we just put some legs on it and we can now land it like it was supposed to before they decided to catch it with the launch tower arm. It makes a lot of sense actually, because you don't need like big cranes and you don't need people to operate the cranes. It can just do it all autonomously, and you don't need landing legs. But in Kerbal Space Program, anything can operate autonomously if you put a probe core on it, and landing legs don't need a big amount of refurbishment. So in real life, it makes sense. Kerbal Space Program, it kind of doesn't. But you can see we have almost gotten into orbit. We just need to circularize. And we can reuse the booster. I did try and land this on a drone ship this time because I was worried we won't have enough fuel for the boost back burn. We do have enough fuel for the boost back burn. I just didn't realize that at the time. So I just decided to land it on the drone ship, but little did I know that we haven't recovered our Sarnis booster from the last time we launched it. I don't know when we last launched a Sarnis booster. But we still have a booster on the drone ship. So I have to narrowly avoid it before actually landing the booster. But we will recover both of these, so we don't have this problem again. We did break off 2 of the landing legs too, but oh well. I think those are easier replaced than engines or the entire drone ship. Or the booster, for that matter. The landing legs are probably like the cheapest part of the booster, but in Kerbal Space Program at least. But this mission is rescuing another Kerbal. But we are not only rescuing this Kerbal, we are rescuing his spacecraft. It's not really a spacecraft, it's just a single command pod. I'm not sure how he got it there, and I'm not sure what it was for. Like, why would you put a fighter cockpit in low orbit of the Mun? Because we don't even have that good of SSTO technology. I mean, but I don't know how it got there, but we are getting it back with the Starship. And yeah, that's this entire mission. Technically, this new Kerbal will be the first Kerbal to be in a Starship that's actually supposed to land. I'm not giving him the reward of being the first Kerbal to pilot a Starship, because of course we have to do that. We have to do that maneuver at the end, and I think Jebediah Kerman is the only Kerbal capable of piloting that maneuver on a crewed starship. But we aren't making any crewed starships right now, so I guess this Kerbal is just like riding along while the computers do all the work. But you can see we have gone in the Kerbal, and Dudeman is his name, and we have gone into the Mark. I don't know the name of that capsule, but it's like it's the hexagon lander can, and I put him in there in case the capsule couldn't survive, so he wouldn't kill a Kerbal accidentally. So we just have that in case for some reason the actual capsule we're supposed to rescue melts inside the cargo bay, which would be kind of weird, but just in case. And we have also retrieved the capsule, which we grabbed with one of those claws. Because I'm not sure how else we have to grab the capsule. It doesn't have a docking port or anything. But now we're trying to land it, and just standard procedure from here. It was also probably not a very good idea to have... It probably wasn't a good idea to have a crew member on a flight of a Starship that failed its landing once before. Because in the last episode, when he tried to land a Starship from orbit, we failed quite badly at it. But, I mean, Kerbal safety standards, they're pretty non-existent. They don't really care if we put crew on top of a untested rocket that's just a bunch of solid rocket boosters. But, you know, we probably have the problem worked out, which was, I mean, I don't know what the problem was. I think it was the reaction wheels. They didn't have enough torque, because I tried to limit it because I wanted like the engines to do most of the work. But as it turns out, something went off with the landing in the last episode, but thankfully, as you will see in a couple seconds, we reignite all 3 of the engines momentarily. Yes, right now. And we are now trying to land. It is stable this time, thankfully. So we can now go down to 2 engines and finalize the landing. I started the burn a bit too early, so the descent does last a bit longer than it should. But, oh well. Better safe than have the entire thing blow up from having the burn be too late. Because that would be kind of bad. Especially because we have a crew member on board. If we didn't have a crew member on board, it would not be as bad because we can manufacture these quite quickly. They're just grain silos with rocket engines on the bottom. You know, not the most complicated thing in the world. But now we are launching our first Duna mission. A bit earlier than it should, so we're just going to have it wait in orbit. And we're launching it on not an Atlas V clone. Definitely not. But this is a new launch vehicle. And I think it's going to be the replacement for the Constellation booster. And it's probably going to be called Constellation Mark II. Although this looks absolutely nothing like the Constellation booster. Because the old Constellation booster was effectively a Titan booster, Titan 3. This is an Atlas booster. They have nothing in common besides, I guess, the 2 engines on the first stage. Actually, the Titan didn't have 2 engines on its first stage, I don't think. It may have just had 2 nozzles on its first stage and just 1 combustion chamber. Although I'm not sure if that's true or not. So it might be, it might also not be. But I then realized that we were 40 days early for the transfer window. So it's just going to wait in orbit for that long. And then we'll send it off to Duna along with a bunch of other probes. I also didn't tell you the name of it. I've started naming things, and that's going to be called, I forget if it's the Phobos or Deimos orbiter. And if it's the Deimos, it's going to orbit Ike, and if it's Phobos, it's going to orbit Duna. I tried naming all the probes in the Duna mission after moons of Mars or features of Mars. The what's it called? The orbiters are named after the 2 moons of Mars, and the lander is called Olympus because Olympus Mons is a big volcano on Mars, and the Ike lander is called Marineris because that's the big canyon on Mars. So I try and name these things, but I'm not very good at naming them. But now we are launching Explorer, and as you may notice, it is a bit more upgraded than the previous one. The booster has 4 Vacuum Raptor engines on it, and the shuttle has 2 Terrier engines on it, which makes it a lot easier to control because we don't have angled thrust anymore. But it also doesn't make very much sense because the Vacuum Raptor engines use Methalox. The Terrier engines are probably like hydrazine powered. They probably use hypergolic propellants. They're both sharing the same fuel tank. It doesn't make much sense if you think about it too hard, but if you think about it in the logic of Kerbal Space Program, it makes sense because they both use liquid fuel and oxidizer. The only difference really is the exhaust color. But it's quite strange if you play Realism Overhaul, which I'm not skilled enough to play Realism Overhaul. But hypergolics and methalox, they're not the same fuel type, so I'm not sure how that works. Oh well, best not to think about it too much then. But now, our main goal is going to the Minmus Orbital Outpost to, I forget what we're doing. I think we're like adding a new module to the station. And I think that's all the rest of the episode is going to be. But yeah, we are heading out to Minimus right now, and yeah, that's basically it. You can see the orange tank is completely out of fuel, or you could call it a shuttle orange tank. The big orange tank, the shuttle external tank, there are many different names for that. Or you could call it the big orange shuttle external tank. I might have said this in the last episode, I can't be sure, but it's the first flight of the first 2 or 3 flights of the space shuttle actually did not have the big orange tank on it. It had a big tank, but it wasn't orange. It was actually white, for reasons I do not know. But for the first 2 flights of the space shuttle, they didn't have the orange tank. They had a white tank, sort of like the Saturn V, how it looked, with I believe it had like black raceways on it, sort of like how the Saturn V did. I can't be sure though. But then they decided, hey, this paint is really heavy, so why don't we just leave it orange, because that was actually the color that the tank came in. Because of like insulation and stuff, once again, I don't know. But that's how I think that's why the shuttle tank is orange instead of blue, because I'm not sure why you would want a blue shuttle external tank, or maybe a yellow shuttle external tank. That would look pretty awful, and or I could be wrong. I've never seen a yellow shuttle external tank, but what I picture in my head, I don't think it looks the best. But now we have arrived at the Minmus Orbital Outpost, and we are now docking all the modules, which is a science lab and cupola, a bunch of spare supplies, and a bunch of monopropellant storage. Unfortunately, however, we ran out of monopropellant on the main on the science lab, so we have to get our engineer out really quickly, attach one of these pipe endpoints to the station and to the science lab, and then we have to fill it up with monopropellant, and then we can dock to the space station. It just happened, so now there's not much to talk about, but now we can dock the space shuttle. And after I forget what we just did there. But now we are trying to dock the space shuttle, and we are also going to be returning Pathfinder back home for upgrades and repairs, i.e. putting nuclear engines on it. Because that will allow us to carry more payload, which is good. And it will also allow us to not do much else. Nuclear engines are pretty cool though. So the nuclear engines are going to kind of be like what we have with the Terrier engines right now on the Explorer. But instead of Terrier engines, they're going to be Nervas. But I'm not sure when that's going to happen. Probably in like a couple episodes or so, but probably not for a bit. Because I still need to edit episode... Actually, I've already edited episode 13. I need to get episode 13 out. I need to edit episode 14, 15, 16, and I don't know how much footage I have, so... Yeah, I still have a lot of footage I need to get through before I actually can do that, or at least do that in the video. But we also carried a bunch of supplies like science experiments, parachutes, and spare antennas, stuff like that. And we can just attach a better antenna onto the station and have a better antenna. Now it's just getting the old crew back into Pathfinder and undocking Pathfinder from the station and sending it back home for repairs and upgrades, as I said. With a nuclear powered shuttle, we could probably go to Duna, but I don't want to send a nuclear powered shuttle to Duna because you don't really want to see shuttles flying to Duna without any other equipment. You want to see these big interplanetary spacecraft that have science labs and stuff on them. Like, that's what I picture an interplanetary spacecraft to be. Sort of like the Constellation program, how it had the nuclear-powered Mars transfer vehicle. That thing was pretty cool, in my opinion, because it used nuclear engines, and I think nuclear engines are cool. But that's what I picture when I think interplanetary spacecraft, in Kerbal Space Program at least, because I haven't played stock Kerbal Space Program without USI life support in so long that I've forgotten what sending Kerbals to Duna in a Mark 1-3 land capsule looks like. Because with USI life support, you can't do that. You have to pack supplies. You have to pack habitation time, so you have to have a lot of habitation on your spacecraft. You have to have a lot of everything, and that increases the weight. So nuclear engines are a good choice, and with Interstellar Extended, you want a lot of science, so you put a science lab on there, and then you get these really big spacecraft, which I like a lot more than sending Kerbal to Duna in a Mark 1-3 lander can. At least in my opinion. I mean, you can say you like sending Kerbals to Duna that way, but I like having the challenge of having life support because of that reason right there. You can see we are trying to plot our descent back to the Space Center, and that's about it. We are also carrying a bunch of science along with our shuttle, so we will not only get a lot of science from the science labs, which have been researching at like 6 science per day, which is a lot of science per day, because each episode probably goes to about like maybe a 40 or so days worth of time. So 40 times 6, I'm bad at mental math, but that's a really big number, and that's a lot of science points. And So we're getting a lot of science from the Minimus Orbital Outpost, and we're also going to get a lot of science from the shuttle coming back, because it's carrying new science from the surface. I'm not sure the entire makeup of the old crew, but you can see at least we definitely have more Kerbals on the shuttle. We have Tombo Kerman, we have Amand Kerman, we have Valentina Kerman. We have a lot of Kerbals on the space shuttle that are coming home, but we also sent up a lot of Kerbals, so it sort of evens out. But now we are approaching the Space Center and landing safely, because we don't want to be landing dangerously. We want to be landing safely in order to save the Kerbals. But you can see we get a nice cinematic flyby shot of the shuttle landing, and we touch down with the two main wheels before touching down on the nose, and that will be the end of this episode. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.